On January 21st, a line was crossed that few in Washington ever expected to see crossed, not because of who was accused, but because of who voted. The House Oversight Committee voted to hold Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton in contempt of Congress after both refused to comply with subpoenas connected to the renewed investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and the handling of testimony, records, and institutional knowledge surrounding his network. The votes were not symbolic. They were decisive. 34-8 for Bill Clinton, 28-15 for Hillary Clinton. And most striking of all, 9 Democrats joined Republicans in voting yes, including members of the progressive wing that rarely, if ever, break with party leadership. This was not a fringe rebellion. It was a structural fracture. For 6 months, the committee had issued subpoenas requesting depositions related to Epstein's associations, communications, and political protection. For 6 months, both Clintons declined to appear, not invoked privilege, not negotiated scheduling, declined. The committee responded with contempt proceedings, a rarely used but legally meaningful mechanism that signals Congress believes its authority has been directly challenged. Contempt of Congress is not a media phrase. It is a statutory process that can trigger fines up to $100,000 and potential imprisonment of up to 1 year if enforced by the Department of Justice after a full House vote. That vote is now expected within 2 weeks. This is not about proving crimes. It is about power. Congress asserting that no individual, regardless of status, wealth, or historical influence, can simply ignore lawful subpoenas without consequence. The Epstein case is not being reopened because of conspiracy theories or internet pressure. It is being reopened because evidence, testimony gaps, sealed communications, and unresolved immunity decisions never received full congressional scrutiny. The committee's focus is narrow but explosive. Who knew what, when they knew it, and whether institutional deference shielded individuals from accountability. Bill Clinton's documented past association with Epstein has been public for years, acknowledged but never fully examined under oath. Hillary Clinton's involvement is procedural, tied to records, communications, and institutional responses during and after Epstein's prosecutions. The refusal to appear transformed an inquiry into a confrontation. Once contempt is invoked, the narrative shifts. This is no longer about allegations. It is about defiance. 9 Democrats voting yes signals something deeper than politics. It signals fear of being on the wrong side of history. The Epstein case has become radioactive, not because of what is known, but because of what remains unanswered. The public understands one thing very clearly. Epstein did not operate alone, and systems failed repeatedly. When powerful figures refuse testimony, suspicion grows automatically, regardless of innocence. The committee knows this. The members voting yes know this. And leadership understands that shielding anyone now risks institutional collapse later. The coming House vote will force every representative to choose between party loyalty and congressional authority. The penalties outlined in statute are real, but enforcement is discretionary, and that discretion now sits at the center of a political storm. This is how scandals evolve, not through accusations, but through resistance. When subpoenas are ignored, consequences follow, or the law becomes optional. Washington rarely tests its own limits. This time, it did. What happens next matters far beyond the Clintons themselves. Because this moment is not about 2 individuals, it is about whether power still answers to process. If the full House votes to uphold the contempt findings, the referrals move forward, and the Justice Department must decide whether congressional authority still carries weight when applied upward instead of downward. That decision will not be made in a vacuum. Ghislaine Maxwell is scheduled to testify on February 9th from federal prison, and her testimony carries the potential to reopen networks, timelines, and protection mechanisms that were never fully exposed. Her cooperation changes the calculus. Congress is no longer operating with fragments. It is preparing for sworn testimony that may contradict previous public narratives. The refusal of high-profile witnesses to appear before that testimony occurs is not illegal by itself, but it is politically combustible. Every institution involved understands the risk. If contempt is enforced selectively, trust erodes. If it is ignored entirely, authority collapses. The Epstein case sits at the intersection of wealth, politics, intelligence, and silence, and the public's patience for procedural avoidance has run out. That is why bipartisan votes matter more than headlines. When members of the president's own party vote to advance contempt proceedings, they are signaling that survival now depends on transparency, not protection. This is not a criminal trial. It is an institutional stress test. Congress is asking whether subpoenas still mean anything when directed at legacy power. The Clintons are symbols here, not endpoints. If they are compelled to testify, it establishes precedent. If they are not, it establishes immunity by influence. Neither outcome is neutral. The looming House vote will clarify where the system draws its line. The penalties outlined by statute are severe on paper, but the true consequence is reputational and structural. A finding of contempt affirms that refusal carries cost. A failure to enforce it confirms that hierarchy overrides law. As Maxwell prepares to testify, timelines converge. Questions once dismissed as resolved are returning under oath. Records once sealed are being re-examined. Silence is no longer a stable position. The Epstein case has always been less about a single criminal and more about how institutions respond when power is implicated. This phase confirms that the reckoning is no longer avoidable. Regardless of outcome, something fundamental has shifted. Congress has asserted itself, party lines have cracked, and the system has been forced to choose between continuity and credibility. That choice will define what happens next, not just in this case, but in every future investigation involving elite power. This is not the end of a story. It is the moment where the rules either apply universally or stop applying at all.